What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you the many weird things that Larian Studios has had me do for achievements. By which, I mean they put them in their games, which meant I was bound to do them sooner or later. So initially, when I started making this video, I was just thinking about some of the odd things I'd done for achievements here and there and how that might make for an entertaining video, and yet halfway through putting that together I realized that most of the entries were from Larian Studios, at which point it naturally occurred to me then to make the entire video about the odd things in their games, be it strange technical workarounds or some, let's say, humorous situations. But for those completely unaware, long before I started doing reviews as my main thing, what I was really doing a lot of was covering the Divinity series, which was, of course, made by Larian Studios, and I have played all of them. Divine Divinity, Beyond Divinity, Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, Dragon Commander even, because I wanted to see what they got up to lore-wise, and obviously then that took me to some odd and strange places before we even get to the more contemporary BG3, where many of you got to experience Larian's strangeness for yourselves. But to get this video going properly, we are going to start with, I would say, the more boring ones, and then work our way up to the more strange entries. So this first entry is odd, to be sure, but it is more of a technical workaround for one of Larian's more strange games, frankly. That being Divinity Dragon Commander. Dragon Commander was an odd mix of real-time strategy with the occasional gameplay elements of actually being a dragon and riding around. There's also a bunch of story elements as you take control of an empire, which includes political marriages and some very odd quest lines with your potential wives that honestly could by themselves be more than enough for this list. But I'd like to focus on something a little more strange because I think some people might not be aware of it given how niche this was. Because one thing you might want to know about Dragon Commander's achievements going into it is that it has multiple multiplayer achievements because there was an online element thanks to the RTS aspect of it. And while you can play against AI in those skirmish battles, there are achievements for doing things like winning a 2-on-2 campaign, which basically means you need you plus 3 other people to actually play this game, or so you would think. Because you can actually earn these completely by yourself, albeit with some odd workarounds. You see, Dragon Commander, for whatever reason, will actually allow you to open multiple instances of the game on a single computer, meaning that what you can do here is basically go into the files, get yourself 4 instances of the game running, make a multiplayer lobby with yourself, and then win these various multiplayer matches that you can get. Given that nobody's actually playing the multiplayer anymore, this allows you to get them completely alone by basically just winning a match against yourself in these multiplayer matches. Now, what makes this a little tricky, though, is that obviously this isn't meant to run 4 instances of the same game at once, and so your FPS is going to be like a whopping 10 frames per second if you are lucky. But presumably, if you are playing niche games like Dragon Commander just to see what they're all about, this probably isn't that much of a stretch for you. Now, for our next entry, we get slightly more interesting, to be fair, but still more on the technical side of things. You see, this one is about Divinity Original Sin 1 and getting the Honor Mode achievement for that game, which is effectively like an Iron Man run with the 2 characters that you are assigned at the start of Original Sin 1. But the catch here is, the easiest way to do Honor Mode is to in fact just speed run the game. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's probably the most fun way to do it, as a matter of fact, because while you certainly can power your way through ultimately much less refined Divinity Original Sin 2, mastering tactical combat, overcoming challenging encounters, what you could do instead is actually embrace the cheese that the game actively tries to get you to embrace by skipping all of that. And what I kind of love about this is that it is very in the spirits of Divinity. Finding ways around combat encounters and ways to cheese them, that kind of stuff, is really just at the spirit of what these game series have always been about. But to give some specifics, what makes this easier is that speedrunning Original Sin 1 really just requires you to combine 2 different bugs. So there's well-known bugs in Original Sin, which have to do with weight limits in inventory items like containers, in particular chests, where if you massively overload them with weight and then use telekinesis, which allows you to pick things up regardless of their weight, you can essentially just smash enemies with them, which will deal thousands upon thousands of damage, which will kill even the last boss in just a couple of hits if you set it up properly. But while that's all well and good, you still have to actually get to the boss, which is actually going to make use of the game's second exploit, which is is the teleporter pyramids. You see, there was a bug with the teleporter pyramids, which you would normally throw on the ground and then use to teleport between locations, but rather instead of that, you could throw one an endless distance by exploiting a small bug with where they would get set down on the ground with, effectively allowing you to skip entire maps as long as you knew exactly where to drop it. And combining those two things, this particular speed run will only see you actually fighting a couple of things, and even then you're using those heavily weighted chests to skip it, or you're using stealth to simply get around enemies. And while it might take you a couple of tries to get used to it, it is genuinely not hard at all. And given that honor mode is likely the very last thing you'll do in that game, I think it's perfectly fitting as a way to sort of wrap that one up. But flipping the script there entirely, outside of being cheesy and successful, Divinity Original Sin 2 has an achievement where it's required that you fail on an almost astronomical level. In fact, to this day, this is Divinity Original Sin 2's rarest achievement, which is called the Isle of Last Resort. Basically, in order to get this, you need to fail Act 2 as massively as possible, which not only leaves your character weaker, but also ultimately results in the death of Malady a little later in the game. So not only do you have to fail hard and intentionally. You gotta mess this up pretty bad. And it's really not the kind of thing you're going to do on accident. In fact, the game is set up where some of the goals in Act 2 would almost be required for you to deliberately mess up, which is exactly what you have to do, basically. But to be a little more specific, the goal of Act 2 in Original Sin 2 is, in fact, to go around and learn from a bunch of source masters to expand your own capabilities of channeling a source. But the thing is, while learning from these masters of various moral dispositions, let's say, is what advances the plot, with Original Sin 2, much like Baldur's Gate 3, being extremely reactive to things like player choice, there had to be a sort of fallback in the case that you just did really, really bad here. And that's what the Isle of Last Resort is. Basically, Malady has to make a deal with some demons in order to get the location that you would have normally learned by succeeding at a few of these tasks. So not only do you have to fail the couple that normally would have been required to simply advance the plot, you have to fail all of them. Every single source master that could potentially teach you how to channel more source, you have to fail that interaction in some way, or choose actively not to learn from them in some cases. You really only need a couple in order to actually succeed, but to get this, you have to fail every single one. Even the ones that actually aren't that bad and are actively trying to help you. Which of course then means Divinity Original Sin 2's rarest achievement is the achievement for failing miserably. Now this next entry brings us into the modern day a bit with Baldur's Gate 3, a game filled, much like Divinity Original Sin 2, with all sorts of bizarre moments, strange interactions, humorous undertones, but to me at least, the one that sticks out the most, especially in relation to achievements, is none other than an achievement known as Mind Blown, which is perhaps a double entendre for the actual act that earns you that achievement, which is none other than engaging in the type of adult animation that is sure to get somebody demonetized on YouTube. Or to be a little more direct, you gotta make sweet love to that mind flare. And perhaps unsurprisingly, given the state of the internet these days, that is in fact not the rarest achievement in this game, but rather is sitting at a roughly 13% completion rate over on Steam, of which I am less than proud to admit that I was one of the first to achieve, thanks to the review copy they sent me ahead of the game's release by just a couple of days. Somehow, though, we are not done with this list, because speaking of, we have an honestly kind of gross achievement in Divinity Original Sin 1 again. You see, the long and short of it is that this particular achievement is for finding a particularly pungent pair of underpants. Now, to give that a little more context, in the first act of Original Sin 1, your main goal is basically to solve a murder in a town. You can do some other stuff, of course, but that's like your main goal. There are a variety of ways to investigate that crime and a list of suspects that you may or may not actually prove did or did not do all of this. And one of the ways in which you can do that is by bringing a dog a few items that are listed as smelly, which will then point you in the direction of the killer. It just so happens that one of the items you can bring to this dog to smell are in fact a pair of ripe underwear, which you will have found by raiding a woman's bedroom. And on that lovely note, I suppose that's as good a place as any to wrap up this particular video, so hopefully you enjoyed it. Some of the strange things Larian has had me do for achievements, which range from the just technically odd to honestly a little disturbing. But with any luck, you enjoyed all that. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know about some weird stuff you've done for achievements, or specifically in Larian games, I suppose. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom, and have an amazing day.